I still remember the first time I drove down that narrow Louisiana road. The highway gave way to gravel, then to cracked asphalt, and finally to a dirt path lined with cypress knees poking out of the ground like crooked teeth. The air was heavier than I expected, thick with humidity, carrying the sour, sweet scent of stagnant water. Locals called it Bayou Mercy, though nobody could explain where that name came from. It wasn't on most maps anymore. After the hurricane 15 years ago, the government declared the place uninhabitable. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed by the rising swamp. Yet scattered families stayed, survivors, stubborn descendants of the first settlers who had always called the Mire home. I was here for research, or at least that's what I told myself. A graduate project on wetland restoration, climate shifts, and folklore. But deep down, there was something else. Something that whispered in my chest the moment I read about Mercy in the university archives. The settlement appeared like a mirage. Shacks perched on stilts above the water, sagging wooden walkways connecting them like a crooked spider web. Boats were tied up along the edges, rocking softly. Children paused their play to watch me as I stepped from the car. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, as if strangers didn't come here often. An old man with skin as leathery as bark leaned against a post, chewing on something. He nodded at me, but didn't smile. The house I rented belonged to a woman named Alma. She greeted me with a polite, almost rehearsed warmth, but her eyes lingered too long. "You'll hear the swamp at night," she said, handing me the keys. Best not to answer it. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the humidity. That evening, I walked the narrow planks that led deeper into the marsh. Cypress trees rose like cathedral pillars, draped in Spanish moss that swayed though there was no wind. I saw carvings etched into their bark, spirals, circles, strange runes whose meanings I couldn't place. Some were fresh, others weathered with time. The water below was black, reflecting nothing. When I crouched to take notes, I thought I heard something beneath the surface, a ripple, though nothing had moved. By the time the sun bled into the horizon, the air grew colder. A mist slithered across the water, thickening as the frogs fell silent. I pulled my jacket tighter, telling myself it was just nerves. Back at the stilt house, I set up my recorder. Hours passed in silence until, somewhere past midnight, I heard it. At first, it was only the rustle of reeds outside, the soft hiss of water shifting. Then came the whisper, a voice, low, lingering, drawn out by the wind, or perhaps the swamp itself. It said my name. I froze. The pen slipped from my fingers. "Hello?" I whispered back, regretting it instantly. The air stilled, and then, from outside the thin walls, came the unmistakable sound of reeds brushing together, like hands clapping softly in rhythm. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, Alma brought me coffee in a chipped mug. Her eyes were shadowed, as though she hadn't slept either. "You heard them, didn't you?" she asked. I tried to laugh it off, but the sound died in my throat. "Heard what?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "The echoes. This land remembers. It keeps what was taken from it. If it called your name..." She shook her head. "You should be careful." I told myself it was superstition, nothing more. A fragment of folklore I could document, analyze, dismiss. But the way she looked at me, that mix of pity and fear, lodged deep inside my chest. The swamp had spoken, and it wasn't finished. The next day, I forced myself deeper into the swamp. I carried my notebook, camera, and a small audio recorder clipped to my jacket. Each step along the wooden planks felt unsteady, as though the marsh wanted to swallow me whole. The carvings on the trees grew denser the farther I walked. Circles within circles, lines that twisted like vines. Some symbols were burned into the bark, not carved. I found one tree marked so heavily that its skin seemed to bleed sap in slow amber drips. When I touched the markings, the wood felt warm, almost like skin. I yanked my hand back. Near the waterline, I found him, an old fisherman in a tattered hat, sitting silently in a boat tethered to a half-sunken dock. His eyes were milky, unfocused, but he spoke before I said a word. "You hear him yet?" he asked. His voice was brittle, like dry reeds. I hesitated. "The whispers?" He nodded. "Not whispers, not wind. They're older than you, older than me." The storm woke him. Storm gave him water enough to breathe again. A low, tuneless sound that sent ripples across the black surface of the swamp. I felt watched, though there was no one else around. When I turned back moments later, his boat had drifted deeper into the fog, vanishing as though he had never been there at all. That evening, I listened back to the recorder. At first, it was only static, water, distant frogs. But around midnight, the sound shifted. A voice threaded through the noise, my name again, stretched, distorted. Then another phrase, muffled but clear enough. "We were here first." The voice was layered, as though many mouths spoke at once, male and female, old and young. I slammed the recorder off. My heart wouldn't slow. From outside came the reeds again, brushing together in rhythm. Not random, not wind. A pattern, a cadence like words I couldn't understand. I stayed by the window until dawn painted the swamp in pale silver. Only then did the sound stop. Alma finally spoke when I confronted her. Her hands trembled as she set down a plate of cornbread between us. "My grandmother told me," she began, "that the swamp wasn't always water. It was once land, rich land. Families lived here, worked here, prayed here. They carved their marks in the trees, so the land would know their names." Her voice darkened. "But when the floods came, the land drowned. And those names, they didn't die. They stayed, trapped between mud and water, waiting." Angry, I asked her if she believed the whispers were those people. She looked at me, eyes sharp. "I don't believe. I know." That night, unable to sleep, I walked out to the edge of the dock. The mist coiled low across the swamp. I stared down into the black surface, expecting nothing but my own reflection. But what I saw wasn't me. The face looking back was gaunt, hollow-cheeked, its eyes white as bone. Its lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't hear. Then the surface rippled, and dozens of other faces emerged, layered over one another, like a crowd pressed against glass. Their mouths opened wide, and though no sound came from the water, the reeds around me hissed in unison. My name, whispered again and again. I stumbled back, choking on the heavy air. Behind me, the carvings on the nearest cypress seemed to pulse faintly, as though lit from within. The swamp wasn't just echoing anymore. It was calling. By the third night, the swamp no longer slept. The mist rolled in before sundown, denser than ever, curling between the cypress knees, until the air itself felt alive. I lit a lantern, its glow swallowed by the fog within a few feet. The sound began again, the reeds brushing, that dry rhythm. But it no longer sounded like whispers. It was language. Words too old for me to understand, rising and falling like chanting. Then, between the planks, I saw water bubbling up, thick, dark, restless. The air smelled of rot and metal, like rusted blood. My lantern flickered, and out of the fog, something moved. Shapes emerged, figures made of mist, bodies half-formed, faces shifting like water disturbed by a stone. Men, women, children, all walking slowly across the marsh, as though the ground had risen beneath their feet. They didn't notice me at first, or maybe they did, but chose to ignore me. Their eyes glowed faintly, pale as the moon. Their mouths moved without sound. I gripped the railing until my knuckles turned white. One figure broke from the procession. A woman with long braids and a face scarred by fire or shadow. She stopped at the edge of the dock, tilting her head as though listening. Then she whispered, voice low, breathless, directly into my ear, though she was yards away. You shouldn't have come. The next morning, Alma gasped when she saw me. Your arm, she said. I looked down. Faint lines had appeared on my skin, curling up from my wrist. Symbols. The same shapes carved into the trees. They've marked you, Alma whispered. The swamp knows your name now. It won't let go. Her fear infected me. I rubbed at the marks until my skin was raw, but they remained, faint, glowing slightly when the sun hit them. That evening, desperate for answers, I went deeper than before. Past the rotting planks, where the water lapped directly at my boots. The carvings grew into vast murals on the trees. Whole stories spiraled around the trunks. People planting, praying, then drowning. Faces twisted in anguish, arms reaching upward, all etched by hands long gone. As I traced one of the spirals, I felt warmth again, a pulse beneath my fingers, and then the trees began to sing. Not with voices I could understand, but with tones, low vibrations rising into a discordant harmony. The sound filled the swamp, rattling in my ribs, pressing against my skull. Through the fog, I saw figures gathering, dozens, hundreds, watching. Night fell without my noticing. The figures stood around me now, circling, their bodies shifting between water, mist, and memory. A voice rose above the rest, layered, booming, ancient. It spoke through the reeds, the trees, the very water. You take and never give. You poison the veins. You drown the roots. You bury the names. The faces glowed brighter. Their eyes bore into me, accusing, unrelenting. I wanted to scream that I wasn't the one who destroyed this place, that I was only here to study, to listen. But when I opened my mouth, no sound came. The air thickened in my throat like mud. The voice pressed closer, surrounding me. You carry their sins in your blood. You are the echo of what was lost. And now, the fog closed in, suffocating. The ground beneath me vanished, and I plunged into the black water. The swamp swallowed me whole. Cold surged through my veins. Faces swirled all around me, pale mouths gasping, eyes hollow, reaching with hands made of silt and shadow. They pulled at me, dragging me deeper, their voices flooding my ears. Remember us. We are the roots. We are the water. I fought, thrashing, lungs burning, but the marks on my arm glowed brighter, spreading across my chest, binding me like chains. Just before the darkness claimed me, I saw my reflection in the water above, but it wasn't me anymore. It was one of them. I woke on the dock at dawn, coughing up water that tasted of iron and rot. My clothes were soaked, my notebook ruined, my lantern shattered. For a moment, I believed I had dreamed it all. But when I looked at my arm, the marks were no longer faint. They spiraled up to my shoulder, etched into my skin like glowing scars. Alma found me there. Her face drained of color. "They've taken you," she whispered. "You belong to them now." I wanted to deny it, but when I tried to speak, my voice echoed strangely, layered, as though more than one mouth spoke through me. Alma flinched. The village seemed emptier than before. Doors shut quickly when I passed. Curtains twitched. The children who had once watched me with curiosity now hid their faces. At the dock, the old fisherman was there again, staring into the water with his milky eyes. He didn't greet me this time. He only said, "You hear them clearer now, don't you?" I did. Even in daylight, the swamp whispered. Words threaded through the rustling reeds, voices woven into the buzzing of insects, the drip of water. They spoke of hunger, of betrayal, of land drowned and stolen. They spoke of justice, and sometimes they spoke with my voice. That night, I couldn't resist. I went back to the edge of the swamp, kneeling on the slick wood. The water was unnaturally still, a perfect mirror. At first, I saw my reflection. Pale, exhausted, trembling. Then its lips began to move, though mine did not. "You've carried us this far," it said, voice a chorus of many. "Now you carry us within." The face in the water smiled. My face, but not mine. Its eyes were too bright, too hollow, too endless. I staggered back. But the reflection didn't vanish. It leaned closer, pressing against the surface like glass about to shatter. The swamp surged alive around me. The reeds hissed my name again and again. The carvings on the cypress trees pulsed with light, spirals spinning like eyes opening for the first time. The fog rose, carrying voices that filled the air with a hymn of accusation and grief. We are the earth. We are the water. We are the names forgotten. The surface of the swamp broke open, and the faces appeared once more. Dozens, hundreds, reaching upward not to drag me down, but to surround me, to crown me. Their voices poured into me until my chest ached, my lungs heavy with their words. When silence finally returned, the swamp was still again. The mist drifted away. The faces sank beneath the surface. Only the moonlight remained, casting its pale shimmer on the black water. But I was no longer the same. When I spoke, it wasn't only my voice. It was dozens, centuries, layers of grief and rage threaded into every word. They lived in the water and the earth, I whispered. And now, they live in me. At sunrise, I packed what little I had left. Alma watched from her doorway, her hands clasped tight as though in prayer. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't say goodbye. As I drove away, the swamp stretched endlessly in my rearview mirror, fog curling across the trees like a hand reaching after me. And though the car windows were closed, I still heard them, clear as my own thoughts. Not whispers anymore, promises. We are not finished. The swamp had claimed me, and through me it would claim more.